Story 1. I was never the kind of person who attracted attention. I liked it that way. No social media, no public-facing job, no extended circle of friends. I worked from home, lived alone, and kept to myself. I wasn't a hermit, just private. The kind of person who could disappear into the background. And that's what makes all of this so much worse. It started after I moved into my new apartment. I'd left a shared house after a bad roommate situation and found a small one-bedroom unit on the edge of town. Quiet and kind of old, but cheap. The kind of place where the walls are a little too thin and the heating makes a sound like someone whispering through the vents. Nothing major, just quirks. I'd dealt with worse. The first time I noticed something odd, it was around 11 p.m. I was reading in bed, the curtains drawn, when I heard the softest knock. Not on the door, on the window. I froze, not even breathing for a second. My bedroom was on the second floor, and there was no balcony, no ledge wide enough for anyone to stand on. I live alone. My heart thundered in my ears. I waited. Nothing else happened. No follow-up knock. No movement. Just silence. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it had been the building settling, a branch in the wind. But the next night, at almost the exact same time, I heard it again. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the glass. I didn't open the curtain. I don't know why. It wasn't fear, exactly. More like dread. The feeling that whatever was on the other side of that curtain wanted me to look. It was like a game, and I didn't want to play. I barely slept. The next morning I checked outside. There were no ladders, no footprints in the soft dirt below my window. I even knocked on my downstairs neighbor's door to ask if they'd heard anything strange, but she said no, and looked at me like I was just another paranoid loner. Still, I started leaving a lamp on at night. I positioned it near the curtain to make it harder to see in. I didn't hear anything the next few nights, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Then the mail started arriving. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a single envelope, plain white, slid under my door. No stamp, no return address, no handwriting, just my name, printed in all caps. Inside was a photograph of me, not in my home, but from outside. It was taken through the blinds, just a sliver open. But there I was, sitting at my desk in the living room, back slightly hunched, hand on my mouse. The angle was high, like someone had climbed the fire escape of the building opposite mine. There was no note, no threat, just the photo. I called the building manager, who shrugged and said the fire escape on the other building wasn't part of our property. "You can call the police if you want," he said, "but they probably won't do much." And he was right. I filed a report. The officer took it seriously enough, asked if I had any enemies, jealous exes, but I didn't. I gave them the photo, but they said without a suspect or other evidence, there wasn't much they could do. So I bought heavier curtains, blackout ones, and I stopped opening them, even during the day. I kept every light off I could. I didn't want to be seen. I stopped reading by the window, stopped sitting in my usual spot. I even started sleeping on the couch in the middle of the apartment. It didn't matter. The next letter came a week later. This one had a note inside. "I like when the light hits your face. Don't hide it." My hands shook as I read it. The handwriting was neat, almost too neat, like someone had practiced. That detail made me feel worse than if it had been messy and rushed. There was care behind this, intention. I didn't tell the police this time. What could I say? No fingerprints, no video footage, no faces, just words. But I knew it wasn't a joke. I stopped leaving the apartment altogether. I ordered groceries, worked remotely, didn't go to the gym or the cafe down the street. And I kept the TV on, just for the noise. because the silence made every little creak feel like a footstep. One night, I fell asleep on the couch with the TV blaring. I woke up around 3 a.m. to static, not from the television, but from the baby monitor. I don't have a baby, I don't own a monitor, but I could hear static. A soft, shushing white noise that was not part of the show I'd been watching. It was coming from the kitchen. I sat up slowly, ears straining. I didn't move, didn't breathe, until I heard it again. Just a whisper of static, and then a click, like someone turning a dial. I crept toward the kitchen with the bat I kept by the door. There was nothing out of place, at first. Then I noticed the small device plugged into the wall, sitting behind the trash can. It was a baby monitor. I didn't own it. I didn't know how it got there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor, staring at the front door with my back against the wall and my bat in my lap. The next morning, I left. I packed a bag, called a friend an hour out of town, and drove without looking back. I didn't explain much, just said I needed a place to crash for a bit. It was only when I was lying in her guest room, feeling some sliver of safety return, that I realized I hadn't seen a camera in my apartment. But someone had taken those photos. Someone had listened in. Someone had placed that monitor there, and I had no idea when. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. It was a text. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. "You moved." "That's okay. I'll wait." That's when I smashed my phone and got a new one, changed my number, wiped my devices. I left that town entirely 2 weeks later and started fresh in a city 6 hours away. I don't use my real name anymore. I don't post photos. I keep my curtains drawn at all times. Sometimes I wonder what I did to attract him, if it was just random or if something about me invited it. Maybe he just liked that I lived alone, that I was quiet, that I never looked up when walking down the street. Maybe I made it easy, but I never saw his face, not once, and I think that's what keeps me up the most. Because when you see someone, you can forget them, file them away as a person. But when you don't, they become something else, a shape, a presence. Sometimes, when I go to sleep, I feel like I'm being watched. Not always, just sometimes. And I can't help but wonder if he really let me go, or if he's just gotten better at hiding. Story 2. My stalker never followed me home. That's what made it worse, because I could never prove they were real. I used to work the early shift at a coffee stand off Highway 18. It wasn't glamorous, just me in a wooden shack the size of a closet, handing out lattes to bleary-eyed commuters from 5 a.m. to noon. The pay was trash, but it gave me evenings off, and I liked the quiet. I liked being up when no one else was. At that hour, most customers barely made eye contact. They'd grunt their order, swipe their card, and drive off. But every so often, I'd get regulars who'd linger just a little longer, maybe ask how my morning was going. Nothing creepy, just human. That's what I thought when he first started coming. He drove a black Toyota Corolla, always clean, always quiet. I noticed him because he always ordered the same thing, a 16 ounces. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. He never said much, but he'd give a little nod, every time, like we had some kind of shared understanding. No conversation, just the coffee, the nod, and then he'd disappear into traffic. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe he liked routine. Maybe he didn't want to talk before 6 a.m. I get it. But then I started to notice the details. He always wore a hoodie, not a brand name or anything. Just a plain gray one with the hood up, no matter the weather. Rain, wind, heat. It didn't matter. He never took it down. Sunglasses too, big ones. mirrored. I never saw his face. Not once. At some point, I realized I didn't even know the sound of his voice. I can still remember it now. Barely above a whisper when he said, "Just black." And the nod. Always the nod. Then he started coming twice a day. At first I thought I was imagining it. I'd see the Corolla again in the drive-through line, hours after the morning rush, ordering the same thing. Still no talking. Still no face. The third time it happened in a week, I got nervous. I even checked the security cam footage, but the angle was too wide. I couldn't see the plate, and the glare off the windshield made it impossible to see inside. I mentioned it to my manager. She laughed and said maybe I had a secret admirer. But the fourth time, he parked. He didn't go through the drive-thru. He parked across the lot, right at the edge of the tree line, and just sat there, engine running, facing the stand, watching. I stared back through the window, pretending to wipe the counter, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest. He didn't get out, didn't order. He just waited until I turned my back, and when I looked again, he was gone. That night, I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined headlights flashing through my apartment window. I started locking my bedroom door, even though I lived alone. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't even the same guy. There must be 100 black Corollas in the city. But then, he stopped showing up for coffee and started showing up at other places. Once, I was at the laundromat a few blocks from my apartment. I'd just loaded my clothes into the dryer when I saw the Corolla pull into the lot. I couldn't see the driver. The windows were tinted, darker than I remembered. He didn't get out. Just sat there. I left my laundry and walked home, heart pounding in my ears. When I came back an hour later, the car was gone. My clothes were still in the dryer, still warm. Another time, I was in the grocery store, just grabbing some bread and eggs. I wasn't even thinking about him. But as I came out, there it was, parked at the far end of the lot, lights off, driver's seat empty, or at least it looked that way. I walked straight past it, forced myself not to look. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. I didn't want to show fear. I tried reporting it. The police took a statement but didn't seem too interested. "Is he threatening you?" they asked. "Has he approached you directly?" The answer was no. Just watching. Always watching. But that's what got under my skin. The patience. The silence. After a week of no sightings, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe he'd moved on. Maybe it really had been nothing. Then I got the letter. It wasn't in my mailbox. It was under my pillow. That detail makes my skin crawl even now. Just a single sheet of paper, folded once. Inside it said, "You look different in blue." That day at the laundromat, I'd been wearing a blue hoodie. I hadn't worn it before. I never wore it again. I stopped working after that. Quit the job at the coffee stand. Moved in with my cousin across town. I didn't explain everything. Just said I needed a place to crash. He's the kind of guy who doesn't ask too many questions. For a while, things were quiet. I started walking again, trying to feel normal. I left my phone off. No GPS, no social media, no routines. And still, it wasn't enough. One night, I was walking home from the corner store, paper bag in hand, when I saw it. Parked across the street from my cousin's house. Not the Corolla. A different car. Gray. Bigger. Van-shaped. At first I thought it might just be some delivery guy, or someone waiting to pick up a kid. But as I passed it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The side mirror was pointed directly at me. I mean, exactly aligned. Like it had been adjusted just to watch the sidewalk. No other car had their mirrors like that. I looked up at the driver. Tinted window. I couldn't see a thing. I walked faster, told myself not to look back, but I heard it. The soft click of an engine starting just as I turned the corner. I sprinted home, locked the doors, turned off every light. I stayed awake all night. The next morning, there was a note taped to the front door. "You're faster than you look." That was the last straw. I moved again, out of state, changed my name, got a job with no public access, no commute, no exposure. My cousin helped me pack. He still doesn't know why I left so suddenly. I just told him it was a personal emergency. That was a year ago. I haven't seen the Corolla since. No more notes, no strange parked cars. Sometimes, I even let myself believe it's over. That maybe I was just a passing obsession. Maybe I did the right thing by disappearing. But something's wrong. I got a package 2 days ago. No return address. Inside was a set of car keys. Just a regular pair of keys with a worn black fob. And a note. Same car, different driver. Story 3. There's something humiliating about not being believed. I used to think that if something terrible ever happened, if I were attacked, harassed, stalked, I'd go to the police, tell the truth, and be taken seriously. But when it actually happened, I realized how easy it is for the world to dismiss you when your story doesn't come with evidence. Especially when your stalker is a woman. Her name was Valerie. At least, that's what she told me the first time we met. I was working the front desk at a mid-sized gym in Portland, Oregon. Nothing fancy, just a mix of treadmills, yoga classes, and regulars who grunted too loudly during deadlifts. I wasn't passionate about fitness, but the hours were flexible, and they let me take free classes on my days off. Valerie started coming in mid-December. Tall, pale, dressed in all black, with sharp bangs and old Converse that looked like they'd been through a war. She was quiet, but polite. I checked her in a few times before I really noticed her. What made her stand out wasn't her looks. It was how she always watched people. Not in a creepy way. At first, she wouldn't wear headphones. She wouldn't bring a water bottle or a towel. She'd walk on the treadmill at the slowest possible speed, staring straight ahead without blinking. No music, no phone, just walking and watching. After a week, I asked if she needed help finding a trainer. "No," she said, eyes on mine. "I like watching people transform." I laughed awkwardly. I remember thinking it was just an edgy comment. I didn't realize it was a warning. It was around that time she started showing up outside of work. The first time, I spotted her near the coffee shop I went to after my shift. She didn't talk to me, just sat at a table by the window, sipping black tea, staring into the street. I chalked it up to coincidence. A few days later, she was across the street from my apartment building. I saw her through the blinds, standing on the opposite sidewalk, smoking a cigarette that glowed in the cold. When I looked again a few minutes later, she was gone. Still, I tried to be rational. Portland's not a massive city. People cross paths. It doesn't mean anything. But it didn't stop. She began coming to the gym outside her usual hours. First, she'd arrive 10 minutes before I clocked in, then 20. Then she'd wait for me in the parking lot, like she just happened to be getting there at the same time. Sometimes she'd smile. Sometimes she wouldn't. Once, I opened the back office and found a note taped to my computer screen. "I watched you lift more today. You're becoming someone else. I like it." My stomach dropped. I hadn't worked out that day, not in front of anyone. I'd used the storage room where a few of us trained in private. No windows, no cameras. I brought the note to my manager, but she just looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Do you have proof she left it?" Of course I didn't. The office wasn't locked. Other staff had keys. Valerie was a paying member. "Maybe she's just awkward," my manager said. "Don't jump to conclusions." It was the first time someone made me feel like I was imagining it. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next 2 weeks, Valerie's presence became suffocating. She never touched me, never raised her voice, never broke any laws. But every time I left work, she'd be there, leaning against the side of the building, reading a book in her car, sitting at the bus stop across the street, always alone, always watching. I started leaving through the back. I changed my schedule. I even dyed my hair darker, thinking maybe it would help. It didn't. One night, after a late shift, I got home to find a single Polaroid photograph stuck under my doormat. It was of me, taken from behind as I walked through the employee lot. I was looking over my shoulder in the photo. I don't remember doing that. No note, no signature, just the image. I took it to the police. The officer was polite but skeptical. "Do you know who left it?" he asked. "I think it's a gym member. Has she threatened you?" "No, not exactly. She just watches." He nodded, taking notes, and said something like, "We'll open an incident report, but unless she physically approaches or harms you, there's not much we can do." I stood up and said, "So I have to wait until she tries to hurt me?" He didn't answer. That's when I stopped sleeping. I'd lie awake in bed for hours, every creak of the apartment settling like a siren in my chest. I taped cardboard over the windows. I stopped going to the coffee shop. I started carrying pepper spray. My friends told me I was spiraling. "Maybe it's just paranoia," one of them said. "It's easy to get caught up in these stories." I wanted to believe them. I wanted to be wrong. Then came the worst night of my life. I had picked up a double shift. One of the trainers had called out sick, and by the time I got home, I was dead on my feet. I threw my bag on the floor, locked the door, and went straight to the bathroom to shower. I didn't hear anything strange at first, just the sound of water and my breathing. But when I stepped out of the shower, I saw something that made my skin crawl. On the mirror, written in the condensation, "You look cleaner now." I stood there, frozen. The air felt like ice on my wet skin. I stared at the words, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Then I heard it. The front door clicked shut, not slammed, not burst open, just a soft, careful closing. I didn't go out to check. I locked myself in the bathroom and called 911 with shaking fingers. When the officers arrived, they found the front door still locked from the inside. They swept the place, but found no signs of forced entry, no footprints, no broken windows. "Are you sure you didn't write it yourself?" one of them asked gently. I didn't even answer. I moved the next day, took all the cash I had and got a sublet from a friend of a friend across the river. It was temporary, but safer. I switched gyms, changed my phone number, bought new clothes, started taking the long way everywhere. Weeks passed, then months. I didn't see Valerie again, but I never really felt safe. I'd wake up at night thinking I'd heard breathing at the window. I kept a bat by my bed. I flinched at the sound of my own phone ringing. Then, one afternoon, I got a package at my new place. No name, no return address. Inside was a DVD. Just that. No note. I found an old laptop and played it. It was footage. Grainy, handheld footage of me. Getting on the bus. At the grocery store. At the gym. Walking down the street. Laughing with a friend. There was no sound. Just shaky, silent watching. Then it cut to a shot I didn't recognize. Me, asleep, in my old apartment. The camera slowly zooming in, breathing audible on the mic. It stopped just at my face. Then darkness. I felt like I was going to vomit. I took the DVD to the police. This time they opened a full investigation. They finally took it seriously. But it didn't matter. Valerie was gone. She had vanished. No trace, no address. The gym said her membership had been canceled. Her payment card declined. Her emergency contact didn't exist. It was like she'd never been real. But I know she was. I know what I saw. I know what she did. Sometimes I wonder if she was obsessed with me, or if I was just a project, something to unravel, something to haunt and then abandon once the fear settled in too deep. It's been over a year now. I live in a different state. New job. New name. I don't go to gyms anymore. I've started running in place in my living room, curtains drawn tight. Last week I got a letter, no return address. Just one sentence on the page. I liked the version of you that was afraid. Story 4. My stalker didn't want to be seen. That's how it started. Strange signs, invisible gestures. No figure in the shadows, no breathing at the window. Just the feeling of something watching me. Something careful. I was living alone for the first time. A basement unit at the edge of a crumbling neighborhood in Boise, Idaho. I liked the solitude. The rent was cheap because the landlord lived upstairs, and the place hadn't been updated since the 80s. But I didn't care. It was mine. I'm a graphic designer, freelance. I work odd hours, sleep even odder ones. I was used to my own rhythms, eating late, working through sunrise, napping on the couch in the afternoon. There was something comforting about being untethered to time, until it started happening. Small things at first, so small I dismissed them as stress. My front doormat, a faded, ugly thing that read, "Wipe your paws," turned upside down one morning. I assumed I'd kicked it by accident. A mug moved from the drying rack to the sink. I told myself I must have set it there while I was distracted. But then it happened again, and again. Always tiny, always deniable. I started locking the door more carefully, started checking the windows before bed, told myself I was being paranoid. Then one day, I woke up to find the lamp in my bedroom turned completely around, not unplugged, just rotated, its cord stretched tight against the outlet. I hadn't touched it. It sat inches from my head as I slept. That's when the fear started growing. I changed the locks, added a deadbolt. I started placing little traps, coins balanced on the edge of the doorknob, pieces of tape on drawer handles, flour on the kitchen floor. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to know for sure. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it. 3 nights later, I found a single bare footprint in the flour. No dirt, no tread, just the perfect shape of a left foot, no right one. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. The space around me felt heavy, as if the air itself was pressing in. The footprint faced the hallway. It had been walking away from me. That same night, I dreamed that someone had been lying next to me, that I turned over and saw a face I didn't recognize, resting on my pillow, watching me sleep. When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. I moved a chair under the doorknob of my bedroom after that. I told my landlord Charlie what was going on. He's in his 70s, has the energy of a beer bottle left in the sun. He looked at me with the kind of calm pity you give a child afraid of the dark. "Nobody's coming in here," he said. "I haven't seen a soul around." I didn't believe him, but I didn't have proof. Not enough. The next escalation came quietly. I have this plant in my kitchen, just a pothouse in a ceramic pot. I water it once a week, like clockwork. But one day, I noticed the soil looked too fresh. Not just damp, tilled, like someone had stirred their fingers through it. I reached in and felt something hard, dug it out. It was a marble, green, shiny, perfect. I don't own marbles. I threw it away immediately, didn't sleep that night. Over the next 2 weeks, I found 3 more. One under my pillow, one in the toilet bowl, one inside a shoe I hadn't worn in months. Each time, a single green marble. No note, no sign of forced entry. Nothing missing. Just these quiet, deliberate tokens. I became obsessed, slept in shifts, bought motion sensors, set up a cheap security cam pointed at my door, but nothing ever happened on camera. The footage would show me locking the door and then skipping to morning. No sign of anyone entering or leaving, no sound, no movement. But the marbles kept coming. I started documenting them, photos, dates, locations. I wrote everything down in a notebook. I felt like I was going insane, cataloging this silent war that no one else could see. Then, one day, I came home from the grocery store and saw the front door, slightly ajar. I stopped breathing. My mind went completely still. I backed away, got into my car, and drove 2 blocks before I called the police. They arrived quickly, checked every corner, every cabinet, every closet, found no one. But something was different. They found a small nail in the top of my bedroom door frame, just the head poking out. Attached to it by a thread was a tiny brass bell, hidden above the door, where it would jingle, softly, if disturbed. "I didn't put that there," I told them. The younger cop raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Could have been a previous tenant." I stared at the bell. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. "No," I said, "it's new. That wasn't there yesterday." They shrugged, wrote a report, told me to call if it happened again. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. Something had changed. It wasn't just about being watched anymore. It was like I was being studied. Like someone was learning how to move through my world without alerting me. I stopped working, stopped eating. My days blurred into a constant cycle of checking locks, watching camera feeds, documenting everything. I called friends but couldn't explain it, not without sounding insane. I thought about leaving, but I was afraid that if I did, whoever it was would follow me, or worse, disappear forever. I'd be left with nothing but questions. So I stayed. Then came the final night. I'd barricaded myself in the bedroom. I'd moved a shelf in front of the door, pulled dresser across the floor. I slept with a knife beside the bed, phone charged, a light on. I remember waking up at 3:37 a.m. The room was cold, unnaturally cold, and quiet. Too quiet. The light was still on, but it was dim, flickering. And the door was open. Not all the way, just enough. Just enough to see the hallway beyond. I sat up, heart thrashing, unable to breathe. And then I saw it, on the floor, just inside the room. A single green marble. It hadn't been there when I went to sleep. I remember crawling to the corner, knife in hand, pressing myself against the wall. I stayed there until morning. I didn't blink. I didn't move. When the sun came up, I finally left. I took nothing, not even my clothes. I drove 6 hours to my sister's house, told her everything. She believed me. I haven't been back since. Sometimes I still dream about the marbles, about waking up to find one in my mouth, or under my eyelid, or rattling inside my chest. The police never found anyone. The landlord never called. The footage from that final night, corrupted, unusable. People tell me I was lucky, that nothing actually happened to me. But they don't understand. It wasn't about what was done. It was about how close someone got, and how quietly they did it. Story 5. I don't tell this story often, partly because no one believes it, partly because I still don't fully understand what happened, and partly because, to this day, I'm not sure if I was the victim or something worse. It started with a podcast. I'd just moved into a new apartment, small, 3rd floor, old building, but it had a balcony and a washer-dryer, which felt like luxury. I lived alone, and I liked it that way. My job's remote, editing audio for long-form podcasts, so most of my day was spent with headphones on, tinkering with other people's voices, while mine stayed mostly unused. One night, while editing a late submission for a true crime show, I noticed something strange. The recording was supposed to be an interview with a retired detective. It was dry and technical, nothing unusual. But around the 37-minute mark, a background sound caught my attention. I turned up the volume. There it was again. A soft, rhythmic knocking. It didn't match the pacing of footsteps or a fan. I isolated the track and listened closer. It wasn't from the interview. It wasn't ambient noise from the studio. It sounded like it was coming from my side. I paused the recording. Silence. Then, just faintly, knock, knock, knock. I pulled off my headphones. The knocking was still there. It was coming from my wall. I stood up slowly. The sound was soft, but deliberate. Not fast, not urgent. Just persistent. Knock, pause, knock, pause. I walked to the wall and placed my hand on it. It stopped. I stayed there for a full minute. Nothing. Then I turned away. Knock. This time it was on the opposite wall. It startled me. So much I dropped my phone. I backed into the center of the room and just listened. It stopped again. I held my breath. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I told myself it was the pipes, the old building, someone in another unit doing something. I went back to work. The next night, it happened again. This time during a different project. An ad read for a sleep meditation app. I was listening at half volume when the knocking started, louder than before, and from the floor this time, like someone was under the apartment. I stomped once. It stopped. 10 minutes later, knock, 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 from behind me. This time I checked the whole apartment, every closet, under the bed, even the balcony. No one. I knocked on the neighbor's door. A man in his 40s answered, polite but tired. "Sorry," I said. "Have you been hearing knocking? Through the walls?" He blinked. "No, why? Never mind. Sorry to bother you." Back inside, I turned on music, slept with the lights on. I started keeping a log the next day. Day 3, 1:52 a.m. Knock behind fridge. Day 4, 10:11 p.m. Knock on balcony glass. No one there. Day 5, 3:34 a.m. Tapping under bed. I was spiraling, and I knew it. But the knocks always stopped when I tried to record them. No evidence, no pattern. Just me, alone, losing sleep. I ordered a cheap indoor security cam, set it up facing the living room. The knocking didn't happen that night. I started to relax. Maybe I'd scared it off, whatever it was. But when I reviewed the camera footage the next day, I nearly threw up. At 3:12 a.m., the video glitched briefly. A flicker. Then, for 11 seconds, someone stood in the hallway, just at the edge of the frame, motionless, watching the room. No face, just a silhouette. And then, just as suddenly, gone. I replayed it a dozen times. They didn't come through the door. The motion detector didn't even trigger. They were just there. I emailed the footage to myself, called the property manager. She said the only entrance was the front door, and it had shown no signs of forced entry. I changed the locks, bought a bar for the door, covered every window. I stopped working. I couldn't focus, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything but that 11-second frame. 2 days later, another knock. But this time, it was different. It came with a voice, soft, familiar, whispered through the wall. "Why'd you leave me?" I froze, pressed my ear to the drywall. Silence. Then, "You were mine." I reeled back. That voice. It sounded like me. I turned on every light in the apartment, turned off the heat, sat with my back against the door, knife in hand. I didn't sleep. That morning, I played the recording again. My voice, whispered, desperate, echoed in my ears. It wasn't from the wall. It wasn't from outside. The sound was coming from my computer. It had been recorded. Someone had recorded me. I checked my audio folders. There it was. A new file. Timestamped at 3:19 a.m. y_u_left.mp3. I hadn't created that. I hadn't spoken those words. I opened the file path. My system said it was created locally. But there were no external logins, no malware, no remote access. My antivirus was clean. And then I noticed the file name metadata. Under author, it just said, you. I wiped the computer, threw out the mic, deleted all local files. I went out that night, first time in days, and booked a hotel room across the city. I didn't even pack. I just left. No knocks, no whispers. I slept 12 hours straight. The next morning I got a text. Unknown number. We missed the sound of you sleeping. I blocked it instantly. But the damage was done. Something had hurt me. I never went back to the apartment. I paid movers to collect what little I wanted. The rest I left behind. The management called once about some damage to the walls. Said it looked like someone had been carving inside the drywall. I didn't ask what they found. I still don't know who or what was in there with me, watching, waiting. Maybe it was a person. Maybe something worse. But the most disturbing thing is this. When I listen to old recordings of my own voice, I can't tell anymore which ones are really me and which ones aren't. Story 6. There's a moment, just before you realize something is wrong, where the world feels completely normal. That's what keeps me up at night. Not the nightmare itself, but the fact that I walked straight into it while sipping coffee and checking email, thinking everything was fine. My name's Nina. I'm 34 now. This happened when I was 28, living in a sleepy college town called Weathersby, just off campus from the university where I worked in admissions. The house was small and narrow, one of those cookie-cutter rentals with sloping floors and bad plumbing. But it was mine. Just me and a dog named Harper. A border collie mix I'd rescued after a breakup left me more lonely than I cared to admit. I liked routine. Morning coffee, brisk walk with Harper, work until 5, then home to frozen meals and true crime documentaries. My life wasn't exciting, but it was mine. Quiet, predictable, safe, until it wasn't. The first sign came on a Tuesday. I remember because I was brushing Harper outside and noticed the gate was open. I always latched it, always. Habit burned into me by one too many escapes when Harper was a puppy. But there it was, ajar. Not swung open like the wind had caught it, but just cracked, just enough to be an invitation. I looked around. No footprints, no scuff marks, nothing. I shrugged it off. Told myself I must have been distracted that morning. Maybe I'd been rushing. Maybe the latch had failed. 2 days later, I found Harper whining at the back door, refusing to go out. Tail tucked, ears down. This was the same dog who would dive into a mud puddle with reckless joy. I stepped outside first to show her it was safe. And that's when I saw it. A chair, one from my kitchen, sitting dead center in the yard, facing the house. I stood frozen, heart hammering. I hadn't moved it. No one had keys but me. There were no signs of forced entry, no shattered locks, no busted screens. Just a chair, placed, watching. I brought Harper back in and locked everything. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the walls made me jump. I tried calling my ex, just to hear a familiar voice, but he didn't answer. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone borrowed my chair and put it outside. The next day, the chair was gone. Back in its usual spot, tucked neatly beneath the table, as if it had never moved. That's when the silence became threatening. You don't realize how loud a house can feel when you're paranoid. The fridge hums, pipes tick, the HVAC wheezes. But beneath it all, there's something else. A kind of tension in the air, like the house is holding its breath. I stopped sleeping properly, kept waking to sounds I couldn't place, shadows that felt wrong. Then things started disappearing. Not big things, not obvious. A spoon, a sock, a photo of me and Harper at the lake, just the one, the frame left behind. I thought I was losing my mind. Started cataloging everything, snapping photos before bed, locking every door and window twice. I bought a new padlock for the gate and a motion sensor light for the yard. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to sound crazy, but I was unraveling. One night, I woke up to Harper growling low in her throat. She was facing the hallway, completely still. I turned on the lamp. She didn't move. "Harper," I whispered. She let out a single sharp bark. I got out of bed, trembling, and walked toward the hallway. My feet were bare, the floor cold. There was no one there, no sound, no open doors, just Harper, tense behind me, watching. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the couch with a kitchen knife and every light on in the house. The next morning, my laptop background had changed. It used to be a photo of Harper chasing a frisbee. Now it was a photo of me, asleep, taken from above. My bedroom light was off. The sheets were twisted. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. My brain couldn't process it. I checked the image data, taken at 3:42 a.m. the night before. I vomited in the sink. I drove to my friend Lacey's place and begged to stay the night. She agreed without asking questions, probably because I looked like hell. I didn't tell her the truth, just said my house was giving me the creeps, that I needed a break. That night, I finally slept. And when I woke up, I felt like myself again. I laughed. I played with Harper. We made pancakes. I started to think maybe I'd overreacted, that maybe exhaustion had made everything seem worse than it was. I drove back home around noon. Everything looked normal, quiet, unbothered. But as I stepped into the house, something felt off. The air felt heavier, like I'd interrupted something. Harper stopped at the threshold and refused to come in. I walked to the kitchen, stopped. Every cabinet was open, every drawer pulled out. The fridge door was wide open, the stove burners were on, flickering low blue flames. I hadn't left it like that. I shut everything off, closed every door, sat down, shaking. Then I heard a click. From the hallway, the sound of a door slowly closing. I didn't look. I grabbed my keys and ran. I stayed with Lacey for a week. Told the police. They checked the house. No forced entry, no fingerprints, no signs of anyone living inside. They shrugged, gave me a pamphlet on home security. I sold the place within the month. Told myself it was over, that whoever had been watching me had lost interest. But that was a lie, because they still send me things. It started a year after I moved to the city. A plain envelope in the mail, no return address, inside, one of my old socks. Then, a month later, one of Harper's missing tags, bent. Once, I got a USB drive, no label, just a single folder named Alone. Inside were 6 pictures of my new apartment, taken from different angles, all from outside, all taken at night. I installed cameras, moved again, got a security system, got a dog trainer, got therapy. Nothing helped the feeling. You don't forget what it's like to be watched. You start second-guessing your own reflection, your own memories. Last week I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, it was a recording of my voice, singing. The problem is, I haven't sung since I was a teenager, and I don't have any recordings of myself doing it. But the voice was mine, And worse, it ended with someone else breathing into the mic, slow, deliberate. Then a whisper, "You were better when you didn't know." I don't know what they meant, and I don't think I want to, but I know this. They never wanted to hurt me. They wanted to know me. They learned my habits, my schedule, my weaknesses. They knew how to make me feel safe, and then how to pull that away, inch by inch. And even now, all these years later, I feel them behind me sometimes. Like a memory I can't shake. Like an audience I never invited. They don't want attention. They don't want chaos. They want presence. They want to be close. Closer than anyone ever should be. I tried to leave town. Thought if I got far enough away, somewhere remote, off the grid, I could break the pattern, cut the signal, kill the obsession. I went to a cabin 3 hours away, rented it from a guy who didn't even use Airbnb, just posted on a local classifieds board, paid in cash. No paper trail. No cell signal. It was tucked between 2 lakes, surrounded by dense pine, and blessedly, eerily quiet. No cameras, no smart locks, no Wi-Fi. Just me, Harper, and the wind. For 2 days, I felt invisible, free. I took walks. I read by the fireplace. I slept deeply, without that electric tension under my skin. And then, on the 3rd night, I woke up at 3:40 a.m. to Harper staring at the front door, growling softly. I didn't hear anything, but I felt it. That wrongness, that thick pressure in the air, like the moment before a storm. I stepped toward the door, clutching the fire poker, and found a note slid under the crack. No envelope, just paper. 1 line, printed in bold letters. "Even now, I'm closer than you think." I threw open the door. No one, just the dark. Just trees swaying. Just silence. I looked up. A red light blinked in the tree across from me. A trail camera. Wired. Not mine. I didn't sleep after that. I packed Harper in my bag by dawn, didn't even bother locking up. Drove 6 hours in the wrong direction, tossed my phone in a river, bought a burner. But deep down, I know it's useless. I was never being chased. I was being kept. Not with chains or locks, with attention, with presence. Whoever it is, they don't need to follow me anymore. They've already mapped my fear, etched it into my routines. They know what I'll do before I do. They don't break in to hurt me. They break in to remind me I am not alone. I am never alone. And that's the part that breaks me, not the stalking, not the silence, but the fact that I still look over my shoulder in bathrooms, that I still check ceilings for cameras, that sometimes I still hear my own voice, singing, and I don't know where it's coming from.